Good afternoon, everybody. It's noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, and it's a Monday, which means it's time for Content Chat. I'm your host, Erika Heald, and today we have Phyllis Davidson with us. Phyllis, if you haven't already met her, is a Forrester analyst, an amazing, lovely content expert, and she used to sit elbow to elbow with me a long time ago when we were both in-house folks working for a tech company that was creating things from scratch, including content strategy, which means we've got a lot of thoughts and opinions that we're going to be able to share today. So Phyllis, take a minute and just, introduce yourselves to everybody.
Thank you, Erica. And I always welcome an opportunity to do this with you. It's so interesting when you look at the paths we've both taken since that crazy tech startup. Content and AI is such a huge subject right now. And I know we're both working on things related to this. So just a little background, I've been at Forrester since my days at Serious Decisions, specializing in content strategy and operations and best practices in that area at Serious Decisions. We were acquired by Forrester and the research and work continues. Of course, AI is a huge topic for us, and really the low-hanging fruit for AI, Gen AI in organizations, which is, of course, the part of AI that people are mostly talking about, even though there's a lot more to the story. Certainly the low-hanging fruit there has been content. So it's been a big area of focus for us. And I'm going on my 9th year, actually, at Forrester, Serious Decisions combined. So that's a little about me. I know, it's been a while.
I hadn't looked at the calendar, done the math. That's amazing. That means I've known you for more than a decade.
Yes, that's true. Wow.
Well, what's so fascinating to me is that, everyone in content is kind of treating AI as this brand new, fun, exciting tool that we can use to create content. But of course, it's not new. Well, it's certainly exciting, and the widespread access because of generative AI is certainly new. AI has been part of a variety of sales and marketing and business operations functions, for at least half of the last decade, depending upon, of course.
If not more, depending on what you want to count in there. I mean, machine learning's been
Yep.
around for a long time. I remember when generative AI first came out, Erica, I immediately started to say, well, wait a minute. What about AI in general? Set aside generative for the moment. I mean, yeah, it's cool, it's new, it's amazing, it's life-changing, but AI in general has been around. You almost can picture this, little AI bot in the background going, hey, wait, what about me? I've been helping you and automating things for years.
Exactly. So that's why it's been so interesting to see that, everyone's kind of jumped on the train of, hey, let's use AI to create content. Whereas for me, what I thought was funny is, well, but why would you start there when it's actually really amazing for helping you figure out the right strategy to get in front of your ideal customer with something that they're going to be interested in, and that's also can help you differentiate from your competition, because that's where the real power is. Because you and I, we don't have time to go out and read every brand new study that comes out about, how to approach, marketing in a way that'll really resonate with people. We don't have time or the ability to see everything all of our competitors publish on all of the platforms they're on, but the AI can. So, I mean, it's this amazing tool that people aren't necessarily thinking about using for this.
It's a really good point. In fact, I'm working right now. In fact, the timing of our discussion here today was good with my preparation for an upcoming event. You're probably familiar with B2BMX, which happens in about 2 weeks in Phoenix, I guess.
Yep.
And my presentation is on AI and content. And one of the things that, well, actually, largely the focus of the presentation is how else through the content lifecycle should you be looking at both AI and Gen AI to support your efforts. And it really starts with the planning, exactly what you said. I mean, this means if you think about what people are talking about with AI and agentic AI, the ability to buttress research of any kind. So when you think about what folks have to go through to test to come up with a vaccination and all the trials and simulations they have to run, Well, we now are able to make that, well, whether you use agents or other forms of AI, basically being autonomous and running tests, we can get to conclusions so much more quickly. It's that same kind of capability that would allow us to go out and scan, all competitors to try to figure out where am I going to be repetitive versus differentiated in coming up with my messaging. So it's incredibly powerful. And yeah, I know people are scared of it, but there's so many things that we can do with AI without having to be scared. I think. I think it's actually really exciting. The other thing too is it really gets you thinking about how you might do things differently, how the process of handling the content lifecycle might move differently when you're employing AI in the right way.
I think that's probably the best place for us to kind of start, which is really talking about how marketers and specifically folks who are in charge of content, both
Mhm.
for marketing and for the organization, how they can use AI to optimize workflows and really understand and deliver on customer expectations. Because I think it's hard because you have some companies that have been doing this really well for a long time. Like when you go to Amazon's website, they know what to suggest to you that you're going to want to buy. They do it really, really well. But then you have other folks that just keep suggesting that you buy something you already purchased. Or like in my case, I'll go places and they'll show me lots of pictures of things made from wheat flour. And that actually fills me with rage since I can't
Oh
eat wheat.
gosh.
Makes me
Right,
very
right.
sad. Like, I don't want to
Well,
see these delicious treats. Don't show me this Williams Sonoma.
so my boyfriend is a lover of all things cycling and all things big trucks, and he watches a lot of YouTube. When I go to his house, I end up watching CNN on YouTube, and the next day he'll say to me, "Damn it, you completely messed up my feed." Right? YouTube thinks he wants to watch CNN now, so that's kind of fun. Yeah, it's really interesting, and again, when we started talking about Gen AI, and in fact, it is um, a keynote presentation topic at our upcoming B2B summit. My colleague Lisa Gately is going to be doing a main stage presentation on Gen AI and content in B2B. Um, so it's certainly where things have started. The discussion started with production. And then, of course, everyone started to kind of wave flags and say, well, wait a minute, what about what we're doing through the whole content lifecycle? And we often talk about just how challenging management of the content lifecycle is. And part of the reason for that is often there's people from all over the organization involved. So even when there's a content team trying to create a smooth, frictionless process, there tend to be so many people involved that it gets complicated. Well, in fact, that's one of the kinds of things that AI can really help with. So you mentioned planning, and I totally agree with you. There's so much opportunity to use AI with planning. From the standpoint of Gen AI, doing what you said, going out and doing research for us, pulling content from various plans across your own organization. So that's another interesting thing because we'll always tell people at Forrester that you better have the right inputs before you try to put together your content plan. And those may not, people aren't running to you to bring you those, right? But you need to go out to Corp Comms and the advertising team and all your field marketing teams to find out, well, what are they planning before you get too far in your own planning? Well, imagine if an AI agent could do that collection and that auditing of all of those materials in order to get you a much more comprehensive plan. So that's a really good example there. In production, and again, I won't even bother with all the things that Gen AI can produce. We know, of course, it can produce pretty much any content. We love the idea of using Gen AI to personalize content. I still like to think that, for a long time to come, people are really going to come up with the big content ideas. But then allowing AI and Gen AI to build on those and write stuff for us and write derivatives and versions. One of the things I've seen a client do is say, okay, I've got this great white paper. Now I want to create an industry version.
Yep.
Here's what I know about the industry and what the needs are for my solution in this industry. Write this derivative. So suddenly you can make people just a lot more productive. Suddenly, instead of creating one or two pieces a month, you could be creating 10 pieces a month. So there's a lot of opportunity there, but also in terms of the automation. So certainly we all turn to some type of MRM tool, hopefully to manage the content lifecycle. Even the use of those tools will get a real boost from AI because, again, I think agents, and we can, if we want to take a step back and talk a little bit about agentic AI, we can do that. But the ability to basically automate and allow for a certain amount of process behind the scenes to be autonomous. So autonomy is one of the things everyone is talking about, particularly in B2B, right? How can we possibly let AI do anything autonomously? There must be a human in the loop. And certainly we firmly believe that when it comes to the content as the end product. But for simple process flow, there's no reason not to try, because, and again, you can run plenty of tests to see if things are working the right way. But managing all the approvals, certainly we have technology already that's doing that in the background, but getting an AI agent that wholly owns some part of a process to manage in a very proactive way, getting the approvals done with whom they need to be done and all of that. The other thing is pass through, right? So using AI agents to talk to your agencies, that's confusing, agencies, AI agents, in order to move content to production if you're using an agency. We are talking about the fact that, we're going to be looking at multi-agent orchestration in the future, where groups of agents will combine to handle some kind of process. And they may indeed work with groups of agents. I've heard this referred to as multiplayer collaboration.
It sounds like an MMORPG, like one of my video games.
Oh my goodness. There you go. Yeah, I guess it kind of does, doesn't it? Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting things. Now, when I talk about AI agents, I'm just starting to see that happening. And of course, everyone's been talking about agents since Salesforce, the last Dreamforce event, highlighted agents in a big way. There's plenty of time. We're very early. There's plenty of time for us to learn and create in this area. But it is interesting to look to the future. Promotion is another area. So certainly all the automated testing that occurs has already been using AI in the background when it comes to, okay, should I be using this headline or that headline? A/B testing. Yeah. Should I be using this color or that color? Running those tests very quickly is something that AI can do. Of course, connecting that back to generative AI to create net new versions based on what the tests come up with is a very interesting area to think about. So promotion, there's all kinds of things with promotion. And it is also the one place that I've seen people are a little more comfortable, not with total autonomy, but social copy, generating relatively simple changes to social copy, like changing the location of an event that you're pushing out or using an image that's regionally relevant in an AI derived banner ad, that kind of thing. So we see certainly a lot of opportunity in promotion. So when we talk about the content lifecycle, we talk about planning, which we talked about a bit here, production, of course, promotion, and then performance. And this is an area of particular interest to me, Erika, because I've done a lot of work. I recently released a paper on content intelligence. So we've sort of moved away from just talking about content metrics or content measurement to really talking about content intelligence. And when you think about everything I've just described as happening, the fact of the matter is real content intelligence. So content as data about content and what's actually happening with your content will fuel that full life cycle. So you think of it in terms of AI pinging a content intelligence engine or engines to gather data to make its recommendation, to choose the next step it takes. So content intelligence is a super interesting area. I had a client reach out to me recently to say, who's offering the best content intelligence? What should my RFP look like? It's not that far along yet. I mean, you could argue that there are plenty of vendors that have features that are related to content intelligence, but I'll tell you, this is also a big area of growth that we'll see. And it really will, again, we think of it as content as data. It's both content intelligence contains both content about data and content as data is one of the ways that we put it.
I love that. And I just wanted to share this comment from Carmen Hill, who's listening to us. And,
Oh,
I love this comment because it reminds me that for years as content experts, we've had to say, hey, don't have too many personas. You can only realistically create enough content or address only a few people, don't
so
go,
correct.
don't, stay in those lanes, don't go crazy. But now you literally can have all of these intersections between content, your different content personas, because you
Yes.
can have your AI tools actually understand what the meaningful differences are between these customers based upon your owned data, and then have these personas that are even combined personas and creating the derivative content. It's just, we're in such a different place so quickly because of AI capabilities.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it makes you realize that as a someone who is working with content in the enterprise, your ability to expand your own thinking about what could possibly be done is changing so much. And I think we can all feel a lot freer to come up with just more far-reaching ideas. I think adding additional personas is actually one of them. Now, of course, that means someone in your product marketing organization hopefully is recommending the right personas. I
Yeah.
guess the reality is, I mean, let's say your product marketing team said, well, we really have these 10 personas. Based on your own information, you could have an AI engine determine where's the low-hanging fruit
Yeah.
in the marketplace. Who should I try to get to first? And you might be able to gather interesting information there. But Erika, can I bring up a problem?
Yes.
Problems are okay? Okay.
I love
So,
problems because then we can solve them
and
together.
we can solve them, right? So, what I'm seeing right now is proliferation. So, every vendor out there has added either basic access to ChatGPT or other Gen AI tools,
Yeah.
or is adding things organically and really promoting the AI, Gen AI in their engine. And it's very easy for organizations that already have access to these tools. And I'm talking about the users in organizations can make decisions to try things without making a big deal out of it. These are not always things that have any additional cost. Again, some of it is just a pass through that's meant to provide convenience to the end customer. And certainly the vendors out there are all over this. They want to do that. But this is a CMO's nightmare, right? Because we're creating this incredible proliferation. I think if I was a CMO right now, I'd be, and we do see CMOs doing this, really putting the hammer down on we need to do a major audit, figure out what do we already own, what's out there, what do we want to let people use? And oh, by the way, you don't want to be informing all these large language models with your own IP. Big deal for us here at Forrester.
Yeah.
So there's the whole issue of managing your own closed model and all of that.
And
We're
Phyllis,
seeing,
so few organizations have an AI policy. I mean, I've worked with exactly
right.
one client over the past year, one that actually wanted me to take their AI policy and help them create both that internal policy and the external about how clients were allowed to use their IP, which was to say that, hey, you can't put it into these generative AI tools. Your license is just for you as the human to have access to this content. You're renting the ability for you, the human. You can't put it into AI. But literally one client out of all of the clients that
Isn't
I've
that
worked with.
interesting?
Yeah.
Well, I think we at Forrester's an organization. I mean, AI is a huge focus across everything, certainly beyond, B2B content strategy and ops. I think we see more commonly the efforts around IT and sort of a grander AI plan across all of IT.
Yeah.
That doesn't, and that makes sense. I mean, you'd expect IT to be doing that. That doesn't necessarily jive, though, and it's not necessarily ahead of what your average marketer can click into in the software they use every day and is suddenly available to them.
Yeah.
And some things feel relatively benign. All right. So you've got folks across the teams trying things. You want people to feel like they can try new things. It's a messy place. But one of the things I worry about is that we're creating brand new silos, right? So we
Yeah.
all know about software silos that we create in all of our, whatever capacity we're working online with, whether it's in marketing or other places. We all worry about, adoption issues and all of that. Well, think about all the overlap between the AI tools that vendors of different kinds, vendors in different categories, but touching B2B marketing will make available some of the same kinds of tools. So you've probably got people using overlapping tools,
Yeah.
and maybe one's better than the other. Maybe they conflict. I mean, who knows? Doing that audit is really critical. So it's one of the things that I'm recommending to folks right away is to make sure that someone across marketing, sales, product is engaged in an audit of all of the AI and Gen AI available, planned, and really understanding what's going on with need and what's being paid for and what isn't, is another aspect of that. So I think there's a significant opportunity for growth here. We will have to overcome growing pains with this for sure. I mean, everybody's already well into the growing pains.
Totally. So, while we're in this messy middle here of everyone being so excited about the opportunities and folks forging ahead, if we are taking a step back to think about those foundational elements that we need to have in place in order to be successful as marketers using AI within our content marketing programs, what do you feel like some of those really critical elements are that people have to think about before they start diving in headfirst to investing in AI?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, there's a couple of things that are really critical and kind of basic. One is some kind of, whether you've got an actual customer data model or not. If you're thinking about anything with AI that will touch actual customers, there are tools out there that provide content intelligence, but only of anonymous data, never touches your customer data. Okay, that's great. But we're all getting into, our customers are our new buyers as well, and that's critical. Certainly something at Forrester that we champion very heavily is paying attention to your customers. So if your customer data is problematic, you have to be very aware of that before you start putting anything in place from an AI standpoint that might touch it. Now, chances are security folks inside the organization will stop you anyway. But here's the thing. There's huge value to be gained by allowing AI engines to at least touch your customer data, not necessarily do anything with it directly, but understanding what customer needs are,
Yep.
and where your customers sit in terms of product use. I remember when I was at Oracle years ago, we always talked about the fact that there was no real practical way to understand all of the Oracle products that any given customer really owned and to get value from that.
Yeah.
All those years ago, and now I'm going back before you and I met, I remember us talking with some of our data analysts at the time to say, you know what, we can do an analysis and figure out when someone owns product X and product Y, what is the propensity for the next product that they'll buy
Yep.
based on our data of what that ownership is, if we could only analyze it. Things have come
Yeah.
a long way since then, but there's an incredible store of information in your customer data, so access to that. What I mentioned a moment ago in terms of auditing where you have access, so getting someone in marketing ops to figure out literally what I would love to see a map of for all of the technology we have in place that's touching content in this case, and frankly, we should be doing it for all of marketing. What vendors have made capabilities available, and where are we at? Do we already have people using these capabilities? What's happening? And then being able to see the overlap of capabilities. Understanding, of course, what's happening from a large language model standpoint and ensuring that your IP stays your IP. This has become a bit easier from what I understand in terms of large language models not going off and getting trained on their own, that has to be a proactive action. Excuse me. So I think in the beginning that was even more
Yeah.
of a problem. But understanding what's being used and trying to get the most employees that are touching content to use the same thing is key. And if that same large language model can actually learn from the internal work that folks are doing, all the better. Wouldn't you want, one content strategist to gain the benefit of what another content strategist has maybe been doing with a large language model? So anyway, that audit is really key. The thing too, though, is that I'm telling people is make sure you reach out, because outside of just the content lifecycle, wherever your existing process goes out and touches someone else and connects to another system, that is an opportunity and also a potential issue when it comes to what other teams might be doing with AI. So understanding where there might be opportunity to connect AI tools, or at least be aware of competing tools that are outside your given area. Another thing to think about is breaking down processes into very individual tasks. So one of the things that we've been seeing and learning about when it comes to agentic AI is that the safest way to deploy an agent, again, doesn't have to be autonomous, but regardless, the way that you're most likely to get the best results is to have an agent focus on a singular task.
Yep.
Again, it's not hard to orchestrate multiple agents, but the philosophy and recommendation, I've heard this from our own experts at Forrester, is, single task. The other thing is testing, right? No matter what we're doing, we should have, and this is something that maybe isn't real comfortable for folks working in content, you need a sandbox. You really need an actual sandbox to play and run tests in. And that can mean many different things and look different ways. But, for years, we've been working with SaaS technology and talking about how we don't need IT to do so much of our jobs because we can work directly through software. This is a brand new area, and we should be working with IT. And if there's a way of getting a testing sandbox, I think there's a lot of value in that. And then the last thing is elevating people. Again, for whatever we think of that we can do through AI, that should provide us with another opportunity for something much more value added a person can do. And it should just make us so much more productive than we've ever been before. There's endless need for what people can come up with in the organization. And again, it's kind of a matter of, this reminds me of my approach with my closet. So if I want to buy something new, I force myself to get rid of something. So if you're going to be able to completely automate some process that people have been doing, you not only want to automate that process, you want to think about what can people now be doing since they don't have to do that anymore. So
Exactly. And I mean, with that in mind, and thinking back on some of the roles I've had and some of the things that were highly unnecessary and unrewarding for me to do, like, why should your content marketers ever fill out a Jira ticket? It should be
Oh, God.
automated from what they're doing. Same with all the distribution stuff that requires so many, filling out forms, getting
Exactly.
emails. None of that requires a human being. So take them out of it, and they're going to be so much happier because they're not going to have this, I have to do this
Administrivia.
horrible
Yeah,
administrative task. I think we would all like to have less of that in our lives.
absolutely. If we can find an AI agent to feed my pets, I'd really appreciate that.
You love feeding your dog.
Well,
One of the things that I think is just really, really impactful and really kind of shows people what they can do with generative AI is something that I've been talking about a lot. Some of the presentations I've given over the past year are really around auditing your brand voice. Because frequently, first of all, there's so many companies where they have a very disjointed brand voice because so many people are creating content who don't understand how to apply a brand voice to content creation. So it ends up, showing the seams, and you can see that there are very different people creating content in different groups. But what's fun is you can literally just take a generative AI tool, feed it your brand voice, and say, how good of a job are we doing? Grade us. Give
that's
us the
right.
examples of where we've done it well and where we've fallen down. So then it takes some of the ick factor and onus off of the owner of content so that you're not the one saying, hey guys, we need to do a better job here. You're able to say, hey, the AI, found these places where we could do a better job. Or,
That's
hey,
right.
I know that we think that we want to be irreverent, but frankly, we never are irreverent because our CEO always kills all of the irreverent examples, despite wanting the irreverence in there for the brand voice. So having that, that impartial technology that can come in and say, hey, you're doing great, or hey, you've got some real opportunities. And I feel like that's something that we all should be doing, that we should all be prioritizing for the first half of the year, is to have, AI go
Right.
out there, look at our plans, look at what we have in place, and then tell us how good of a job are we doing.
Well, and as a matter of fact, it's also a way of taking something that has traditionally been extremely subjective, right? And making it somewhat objective. So,
Mhm.
suddenly if you have a CMO that's constantly messing with the brand and you've been afraid to say anything, this is a great way to be able to say, to your point, well, the AI is finding anomalies, and here's an example. So it's a big opportunity, and in fact, just a little hint, there'll be an announcement this week from a company on literally this
Nice.
company that's already sort of in the mix out there. That's all I can say, but it is a big area right now. So monitoring brand voice has been seen as a big opportunity here. It used to be, there's been vendors that have been doing that sort of thing, but now it's suddenly much more accessible, both from a technology standpoint and a company standpoint.
And your customers expect it. They expect that your brand sounds the same no matter what channel they're interacting with you through. They
Right.
don't care where your customer service reps are sitting. They need to sound like the rest of your brand. And if they don't, you're going to hear about it and you're going to have
Right.
unhappy customers.
And partners, right?
100%. So I think we've talked quite a bit about kind of the using it for improvement. Maybe we can take a minute and talk about how generative AI can help you understand your customer journey, because I think we've all seen obviously how we've moved from that cute linear funnel that everyone knew was baloney back in the day, but at least we all pretended to agree that it was somewhat possible, to the squiggly lines with all the different touch points that go from somebody, deciding they have a problem to when they actually make a purchase on the B2B side. I'd love to hear how you've seen clients really put AI to the test for figuring out what a customer journey really looks like. Maybe even, how AI can help you figure out what those right content touch points are for those different personas. Because again, the different people involved in every buying process, they are not looking at all the same content. They're looking at different content. And if they are looking at the same content, they're also still taking away different things.
Well, so one of the things that AI can do, and I know of vendors that are doing this with anonymous data about what's happening on your website, and of course, vendors dealing with it in general with known constituents who are going on. First thing you've got to do is let AI look at what's actually happening, right? Which, to date has been really tricky.
Yep.
In fact, I often tell people you have to do a look back from late stage pipeline or close deals and figure out who are the buyers. There's always more than one in B2B.
Yep.
Who are the buyers in that process? Are they attached to the account? And can we see everything they've done? Okay, well, we don't have a single system for everything they've done. All right, let's just take a handful of deals and look at what have people done in terms of their engagement with our content or with events or with sales reps? And can we map out what's actually happened most often with a given buyer type, what we call someone with a buying group role, right? In a deal. And the fact is, I had previously been recommending to people, this is something that you can do manually because you really only need a handful of deals to do
Yeah.
it. But the
Just some
fact is,
sampling.
AI can do this.
And AI can look at all of them. It doesn't have to just sample.
That's right. That's right. So there's a real opportunity there, because one of the things we often say is that, you know, the buyer journey needs to be about what people actually need, the information they need, and the actual journey they follow, not what you as a product marketer want them to do, right? And when we
100%.
create that linear journey, which of course we operate in the dimensional world we operate in, we have to at least create it linearly, and that's fine. You got to start somewhere. Even Gen AI, if asked, would give you a linear journey to start with, but then time, assets, journeys completely loosen. There's no longer any kind of linear need, right? Because the AI engine can handle being nonlinear. And again, what you want to do is have kind of a back and forth motion where you put something out there, AI tests it, sees if it's working with certain kinds of people, recommends different things, different ways to engage with folks, potentially is writing new content on the fly. I mean, I've got a friend in the industry who says that in the not too distant future, there will no longer be such thing as assets. Every single interaction and engagement will be with content that's been put together on the fly. I don't think we're as close to that as maybe my friend thinks. Maybe we'll be there at some point, but
And maybe certain kinds of content that's more likely.
right.
Things like, emails that you get from, they're auto-generated based upon either actions you've taken on a website or purchases you've made. That kind of content, 100% could be
Yep, I
fully
agree with you
automated and
there.
created on the fly with an offer that resonates with you.
That's right. Where I think it might be different is you're coming out with a brand new product that's coming from the brain of a sophisticated engineer, and there needs to be a white paper. That engineer could get help from AI to write the white
Totally.
paper, but then you're starting with some kind of core, and then maybe adapting it from there.
Yep.
So there's certainly that opportunity. But this is about content intelligence, is about building, ultimately the whole point of all of this from a content standpoint is personalization
Yep.
and personalizing the experience, which means, to your point, understanding and basically coming up with what's needed for the actual journey that people are following. And it's changing all the time. That's the other thing too, right? There's all kinds of factors that makes it continually changing. So if you were to have an AI agent that, was your buyer journey agent, it would need to be constantly updating
Yep.
the process in terms of what are the right calls to action, what's next best. Everything is about what's the next best thing. So I mean, that's going to be constantly changing.
I think that's so exciting because, we've spent decades arguing about marketing attribution and getting people who are like, oh, it's, we only need to look at first and last touch and all these other really ridiculous things from a
Yep.
content standpoint. And now we don't have to have those arguments anymore because the AI doesn't care how many, touches there were or how much content was consumed. It can handle it.
That's
So that
right.
way you're not making budget decisions or priority decisions based on just part of the picture, which,
That's right.
I mean, that's why so many folks felt like it was easy to cut. It's easy to cut content creation, or it's easy to cut marketing because it's a big cost center that you couldn't really prove the value of the content. But we're at a point now where you're really able to see how all these different pieces of content and how much content is involved in closing some of these deals. It's not just, oh, this one white paper or this one webinar. It is all of those things working together. So for me, that's
Exactly.
really exciting.
Yeah. And again, that's where, I mean, the hope is that we'll get to a point where this notion of content intelligence and influence on sales via content can really be tuned to the point of, no argument from anybody about whether or not that's real. Right.
That is just such a dream state. But what's always hard though, of course, is all right, that these are things that AI can do, how you want to get there. What if you're in the situation where you don't have the right technology? Like what, and I feel like this is something that you are so uniquely well suited to speak to, because you spend so much time advising, clients in the enterprise, but also advising the companies that are creating the software to help
Right.
these clients. So I'd love to hear, kind of like spend the last third of our conversation just really hearing about some of the, technology platforms or types, and you can choose to name names or not, depending upon the situation. But I'd love to hear about some of the new technologies that you feel like are really making an impact and that content marketers need to consider. Because, there has been in some areas that people who are really content centric have really pushed
Mhm.
back on using AI. They don't want to use AI. They feel like AI is just, the slippery slope to creating, derivative crap.
Right.
So I'd love to hear some examples of tools that, they really should be looking at and considering, that go well beyond ChatGPT.
Right, right. Well, and the market's moving so fast. I know
Yeah.
that my colleague, who I mentioned earlier, Lisa Gately, has been focused specifically on Gen AI, and she will often joke that, "Gosh, I'll be in the middle of writing a research piece, and things are moving so fast that by the time I've got my first draft done, I have to, redo the whole thing because things are moving fast."
Yeah.
But what we tell people is, if you have an opportunity, if you have identified that you would like your marketers to be able to access Gen AI to help with writing or even do some writing on its own, your best bet is, first of all, look at what you already have. Again, it kind of comes back down to that audit to figure out, is it possible that you're already using something well adopted in your organization that may give you access to AI tools so that you'd have something ready made there. Certainly the bigger companies like Adobe, and there's lots of AI access throughout AEM. There are plenty of smaller interesting tools out there, but unless you're in a situation, you're in a startup and you want to try something really scrappy, chances are you've got um, existing software that can give you access. So that's going to be your content marketing system, right? Your CMS. It might be your DAM. I've just taken on DAM coverage at Forrester, and am seeing that AI is the big thing among DAM vendors. They're doing a lot more. These things are not just repositories anymore.
Thank
In fact,
goodness.
that's something that I would say is happening throughout the industry and throughout software. So AI is giving vendors an opportunity to say, you know what, we don't just do X anymore. By adding AI in this way, we suddenly compete in this other area. Now, is that going to be messy? Yes, it's going to be messy for years. It's just a reality of where we are. So that's why, again, we strongly recommend that kind of audit to determine, you don't want people throughout the organization to just be randomly trying AI to do different things. You want to give them direction, and someone or a group of people in the organization should be doing that audit. So CMS, DAM, marketing automation. I mean, frankly, all the software you can think of, obviously Salesforce and CRM, um, will do something for you from an AI standpoint, likely that touches content. So there's almost no end to the number of companies out there that are doing something. In fact, if you think about area that I've covered in the past, content engagement platforms, so where there's been more ready-made personalization, like Path Factory. And Path Factory actually acquired Uberflip.
Mhm.
They talk a lot about AI. They'll also do chat, as a matter of fact. And in addition to that area, content intelligence is something that Path Factory talks about. There's a company out there called Notch that does some really interesting things that with your website. And we were talking a moment ago about the buyer journey. So the Notch intelligence can map for you what's actually happening based on IP addresses and give you a lot of great information. ABM platforms, intent data platforms, they're all incorporating AI in one way or the other. And one of the things that, I kind of warn people about is they're also providing you with pretty much the exact same thing in some cases, even when they're totally different categories of software. And that's where I say, beware that you've got people using too many overlapping technologies and not using any of them to the best of their ability, right? So there's, we talk often at Forrester about technology debt. Is that, what I
Yeah.
mean by technology debt? So, it's going to increase before it decreases when it comes to AI. Everybody wants it, but as for really being ready to use it, not necessarily. And again, there's that issue of needing to establish governance.
Yep.
So I think that most organizations that we speak with are really at that early stage where it's all about auditing what you have and getting things down to just a few tools that you want teams to try for 6 months before you decide on expanding use, that sort of thing. And be really careful about what you do in terms of new tools. By the way, I was going to mention in terms of basic access to large language models for writing, we certainly, there are a couple of vendors out there that have been doing that since the beginning, and even before ChatGPT was released.
Yeah.
And we see more organizations that are very intentional in getting their AI tools are going with those. I can't even think of a name off the top of my head right now, but
Writer.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's certainly, I mean, those are going to be the names that are out there that, have the greatest length of time of users using the software to create content. And certainly it's worth, if you're serious about getting all of your marketers on one kind of generative AI, it's worth looking at those kinds of things as well. So let's see, is there anything else that we recommend? Well, I think we kind of covered it. So I have one client, exactly one, who's actually at the point where her organization has created agents to actually move forward and take action in the content lifecycle. So somebody else was asking me about this, what should I be doing? And it's still really early. This is a confusing mix of things and mix of capabilities. Seems like every day we learn about something new that AI can do and is doing somewhere.
Yeah.
So it's good, I think, to stick with the basics and try those things. Try basic process automation, basic Gen AI content creation, image creation, before you go too crazy trying to do something completely new.
Totally. And just being realistic and understanding that groups throughout your organization are going to be using these AI tools, and they need the content governance documentation. They need those style guides. They need the brand voice work. They need you to, take that pause from doing to, spend some time on the strategic documentation, because it's the only way you're going to have the brand consistency and really be able
Right.
to unlock what these tools can do for you.
I like the way you put that, Erica. Take some time from doing. I don't know how we might finish that statement and put some time on directing or governing. People don't like to think of being governed, but frankly, I mean, if you're being governed to some extent and something this new and this provocative should actually feel like a good thing. Like it's a safety valve for you,
Yeah.
right? You don't want to just be out there on your own in the Wild West.
Because can't you just imagine some of the mishaps that happen in situations where they don't have any of that in place? So then all of a sudden people's, social media accounts start sounding like the windy
Oh,
social media accounts, or, just really off the wall things happen. And you're like, well, those folks clearly have no documentation in place for how their brand turns up in this channel.
yep, exactly. And there's still hallucinations or continue to be a huge problem. But we also see a lot of the vendors out there. I mean, that was figured out early on that, AI believes its own crap, more or less.
Yep.
That it's very easy to have hallucinations, and that is being addressed by a lot of the vendors. I remember there was a great story here in San Francisco, that one of I think the San Francisco Chronicle reporter took this up. Apparently, somehow a recipe had been pushed out there for pizza with a recipe that included glue in order to keep the journalist decided to try the recipe, and it specified to use a non-toxic glue, which must be why the AI engine thought that was going to be okay. So it
Yep.
was like, using Elmer's or something in the crust in order to hold it together better. Yeah.
I'm like, that sounds like a recipe for gluten-free pizza, since it's always so problematic.
Right.
I jest.
Yes.
We just have a few minutes left, so I was wondering
Sure.
if you had any kind of like favorite go-to resources, be it events, podcasts, books, what have you, for folks who, are committed to really making AI, their BFF from a content strategy standpoint this year. Like, where should they be going for some good support and inspiration?
Boy, it's a great question. It's a little, I'll tell you I'll give you a non-answer, but that is interesting. So there's a channel that I monitor. It's actually an email from somebody out there. It's more on the technical side of things, but there's an AI for that. And this guy puts out an email every week with new kinds of mostly Gen AI
Mhm.
applications. That's kind of mind blowing just to see what's going on out there. But that doesn't necessarily answer your question, right? Which is more about what out there is really helpful. So, not to toot our own horn, but I would say, most organizations we talk to have some kind of relationship to an analyst or a consultant. So whether it's access to Forrester, I know here in the Bay Area, we have like a Bay Area content club.
Mhm.
Several of the members have made really AI their focus and are not unlike you, Erica, are putting themselves out there as consultants. I I'll be honest, I don't know that any one channel can give you enough objective information. And I think it is really good to use people resources, people that are monitoring all the different channels. Beyond that, I would say that the bigger vendors, even if what they're putting together isn't quite fully working yet, um, they can be a bit more dependable in terms of what likely is in the neighborhood of things you should try,
Yep.
right? And Adobe is certainly, there's so many offerings there, and it's such a complete digital engagement platform, digital experience platform,
Yep.
that if you want to read about what's really out there and available, it's great to go to some of the bigger vendor sites and see what they're doing. Um, so I would say that. I'm trying to think if there's any other specific channel. Gosh, there's a number of newsletters and things we monitor, but I always feel like those things have their own slant based on the individual author, and they're most often technologists,
Yep.
and not
Not
content
content
people like we,
people. Yeah.
right? So I'd be reluctant to even say, something that we've been doing, and for Forrester clients, is we're putting out a weekly Forrester take on news that's out there, news of any kind that touches B2B marketing, sales, or product. And what's ironic is, again, I'll mention Lisa Gately. So we're all supposed to basically be looking for things to put into that weekly take. Well, basically, she's in it every week because she covers generative AI.
Yep.
It's the one area you can count on. There is news every week. So I would say, I would encourage people, don't get discouraged or, made too crazy by all the noise that's out there. And that's why I would say, unless you've got a group of people who can focus widely on both better vetted solutions and then things that are really new and from startups and stuff like that, if you don't have that ability, if there isn't a consortium or a council in the organization that's looking that widely, I would say go slow, look at the bigger vendors, look to consulting, analyst firms, etc., for recommendations also.
Totally. And the only thing I'd add there is certainly is the Marketing AI Institute, who puts on
Oh,
MACON.
yeah, of
That's such a
course.
great, they have such great, a fantastic podcast and newsletters. And then Christopher Penn, he is such an uber content nerd and always is sharing, interesting things that we can and should be doing with generative AI. So those are my only two things I'd add
Oh,
there.
that's great. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Marketing AI Institute. That's certainly a good one.
So where can people find more of the work that you're doing, or more insights from you? I know not everybody has a Forrester
Right.
analyst login, but where are you speaking? Where can we find your writing? All those good things.
Um, so I always try to do a blog around research that I'm publishing. So I haven't done one super recently, but I did do one in December on content intelligence. And that's also a topic I spoke on at Content Marketing World. Again, in a couple of weeks, I'm at B2BMX in Phoenix, and that's on this topic, AI and content. Really, in fact, I refer to it as the AI-led content strategy with a capital S, like the whole content strategy and operations. And I'll be probably doing a blog after that event. Then soon on the heels of that, we have, actually, I'll be at Adobe Summit speaking on buying groups, which came up when you and I were just talking
Yep.
about buying groups. The fact that the whole funnel thing is not real, right? You've got a group of people that represent one lead, and they each have a very specific role to play. So that's interesting. And then we've got our own B2B summit. I've got several workshops at the summit that I'm doing with colleagues, one on content intelligence
Mhm.
and one on how to build campaigns effectively. And we'll be doing blogs on those as well.
Awesome. Phyllis, thank you so much. This was like a fantastic torrent of information as per
Very
usual.
fun. Thank you.
So appreciate it. And for everyone, thanks for joining us today and being part of our conversation. And we'll be back, not next week because it's a holiday, but we'll be back in
Great.
3 weeks. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Erika. It's great to see you.
Great to see you too.